A quiet October evening slowly descended on the old city park, painting the alleys in golden red tones. The chill air smelled of rotting leaves and the approaching twilight. Under Vladimir Alexandrovich Sokolov's feet, a fallen maple tree rustled softly as if whispering old secrets that time had so carefully hidden from people. This rustling seemed like a quiet lament, a reminder that time inexorably changes everything around it. Vladimir paused, peering into the gray haze between the trees, and suddenly realized clearly that for the past 10 years, he had remained this same lonely man, misunderstood even by his own sister. "What do you know about true values, Vladimir?" The voice of his younger sister, Valentina, still rang in his head, like a shard of broken glass. "Orphanages, shelters. You throw money around like a madman." Vladimir Alexandrovich Sokolov stopped in the middle of the alley and inhaled the chill October air. The leaves underfoot rustled quietly, a reminder that time inexorably changes everything. And he remained the same man he had been 10 years ago. Successful, lonely, misunderstood, even by his own sister. Real values. What did she know about them? This woman, for whom a bank account was the only measure of happiness. Vladimir ran a hand over his sagging temples. When had he managed to get old? When had success become a gilded cage from which neither the left nor the left nor the left could be seen? Mothers with strollers were all around again. Old people on benches discussed the latest news. Teenagers kicked a ball around on the soccer field. An ordinary life full of simple joys he had been deprived of. An expensive suit, a Swiss watch, the latest car. All of this suddenly seemed like a theatrical set. And where was the actor? Where is that man who once knew how to laugh heartily and believed that true love lay ahead? "Uncle, uncle, wait!" a child's voice rang out. Vladimir turned around. A boy of about 10 years old was running towards him, fair-haired, with a wide smile and lively gray eyes. Something pricked in his chest. Familiar. Forgotten. "Excuse me." The boy stopped, out of breath. "Are you by any chance Vladimir? You just have the same eyes as in my mother's photo." Vladimir blinked, not understanding. "My mother has your photo hidden in a photo album," the boy blurted out. "Mom took the album to Grandma in the hospital today. She's very ill, Grandma. And I saw your photo when Mom was packing her bag. You were only younger and without this gray hair," the boy pointed to Vladimir's temples. "And I thought, what if this is the same uncle that Mom has? A mess." He fell silent, clearly having said more than he intended. His heart sank. A photograph. Someone has his photograph. And who is this mother, this Max? "Max, where are you?" A woman's voice, alarmed, familiar. Vladimir raised his head and froze. A woman in a simple gray coat, her dark shoulder-length hair fluttering in the wind, hurried down the alley. Delicate features, kind but tired eyes. 11 years old. 11 years old? He hadn't seen this face before, but he recognized it instantly. "Mom, there he is!" Max cried joyfully. "The same man with the photograph." She stopped dead in her tracks. Her face turned pale, her eyes widened with horror and something else. Pain. Shame. Vladimir stepped forward, feeling his hands trembling. Anna Morozova, is it really you?" She was silent, covering her mouth with her hand. Those 11 years lay be a chasm that cannot be bridged with words. "Vladimir," Anna finally whispered. "I didn't expect to see you here." The contrast was painfully striking. His expensive suit from an Italian designer, and her worn but neat coat, a Swiss watch, and simple earrings. Two worlds that were once one. "Mom, is that the guy with the photo?" Max asked innocently, looking from his mother to Vladimir. "The one who once loved you very much." Anna grabbed her son's hand. "Maxim, come on, we have to go." "Wait." Vladimir stepped closer, and she involuntarily retreated. "Anna, please don't go. I've been looking for you for so long, so long." "Looking?" Bitterness sounded in her voice. 11 years of searching. You don't understand. Then, when I left, then you abandoned me pregnant. She burst out, and she immediately bit her tongue, casting a frightened glance at her son. Max looked at them with wide eyes. Vladimir felt the ground shift beneath his feet. This boy is pregnant. Those gray eyes are just like his own. Mom, what do you mean, pregnant? Max asked quietly. Anna swallowed convulsively. Never mind, son. This is adult talk. Let's go home. Anna, let me explain. Vladimir pleaded. Let me at least tell you why I disappeared. Do you think it was easy? Do you think I wanted to? No need. She shook her head. It's too late, Vladimir. Too much time has passed. But not for him. Vladimir looked at Max, not for his son. The boy looked at his mother, then at him. The child's eyes showed bewilderment, curiosity, and something else. Longing for the father he never knew. Mom, is he really my dad? Anna closed her eyes as if from physical pain. Maxime, we'll talk at home. See you tomorrow, Vladimir asked. At the Rodnicho Cafe. Remember, we often sat there. I remember, Anna answered barely audibly. At 7 p.m. Anna was silent for a long time, looking at the ground, then nodded. Okay, but just the two of us. Max will stay home. Why can't I? The boy was indignant. If he is my dad. Maxim! Anna cut him off sharply. Enough. They walked away, and Vladimir was left alone among the rustling leaves. The boy turned around as he walked and waved. He himself made the same gesture as a child, seeing his father off. To work. Dear friends, we'll be continuing very soon. In the meantime, if you enjoy our story, please like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for staying with us and listening to our stories. This is very important to us. Vladimir sank down onto the nearest bench, feeling his heart pounding. He had a son, a 10-year-old boy who bore his eyes and his gestures. A son who grew up without a father because he, Vladimir, had been a coward. Because he believed his mother's words that Anna didn't love him, that she had gotten involved with him for money. But what if his mother had lied? What if Anna had truly loved him? And what if that long-ago lie had ruined 3 lives, his, hers, and their sons? For the first time in many years, Vladimir felt something awaken in his chest. Not fear of another business meeting, not anxiety for the company's profits, but a living human feeling. A premonition that tomorrow could change everything. He rose from the bench and slowly walked toward the park exit. Tomorrow at 7 o'clock p.m. at the Rodnicho Cafe. He will learn the truth and perhaps get a chance to correct the biggest mistake of his life. The empty apartment greeted Vladimir with cold silence. Designer furniture, contemporary paintings, huge windows overlooking the city center. All of this suddenly seemed like a museum exhibit, one he had lived in for many years, but never learned to breathe freely. He poured himself a whiskey, sank into a chair, and closed his eyes. The boy's gray eyes instantly surfaced in his memory, and with them came a flood of memories he had kept locked away for so long. 18 years old. The last bell at school, graduation, and Anna in a white dress that she had sewn herself. Back then it seemed to him that she outshone all the other girls, not with her outfits, but with some special radiance of soul. They sat on a bench in the same park where they had met today and made plans for the future. You will never forget me, right? She asked then, pressing herself against his shoulder. We will live simply and honestly. Never, he answered with the ardor of a young man in love. We will be together forever. We will build a house, raise children. I will become a good architect, and you will become a teacher just like you dream. She laughed, and this laughter was purer than the ringing of a bell. They believed then that love can do everything. The main thing is to be there, and everything will follow. How naive they were! Vladimir took a sip of whiskey, feeling the bitterness spread not only down his throat, but throughout his soul. The first months at the Institute, he really did write letters every day, called from a payphone, spent his stipend on long-distance calls, talked about lectures, about new friends, about how he missed her voice. And then, gradually, everything changed. His classmates from wealthy families initially treated him with condescension, a provincial, a scholarship recipient, the son of a construction worker. But Vladimir proved a capable student, and the professors noticed him. Internships at prestigious firms began. He met the right people and received invitations to exclusive parties. Then came Ekaterina Belova, the daughter of a major developer, beautiful, confident, and accustomed to getting whatever she wanted. She immediately singled him out from the crowd of his classmates. "Volodya, why do you need this country bumpkin?" she said, casually flipping through his NERM papers. "You were made for the big world. Look at yourself. Intelligence, talent, ambition, and you're about to bury it all in a provincial swamp for some girl." Ekaterina was persuasive. She opened doors for him that otherwise would have remained forever closed. She met his father, who offered him a job at his company after graduation. Vladimir gradually immersed himself in a world of big money, influential connections, and dizzying opportunities. And his letters to Anna became shorter and less frequent. "You've become so distant, Vladimir," she said during their last conversation. Her voice trembled, and he felt she was crying. "It seems we've lost each other. You've chosen a different life." At the time, he thought it was a reproach, that she didn't understand his aspirations, that she was trying to hold him back, to limit his horizons. He responded coldly, almost indifferently. "And I have to think about the future, about my career. You don't want me to remain a nobody my whole life, do you?" The silence lasted so long that he thought the connection had been lost. "I wanted you to stay yourself," she finally whispered. But it didn't matter anymore. The beeps on the phone sounded like the death knell of their love. Vladimir stood and went to the window. The city spread out below, a shimmering sea of lights. His kingdom, which he had so tenaciously conquered. After graduating, he rapidly rose through the ranks at Catherine's father's firm and married her. A marriage of convenience, as both understood. Catherine gained the status of a married woman, which was necessary for her social ambitions. He offered stability and connections. But even this union didn't last long. Catherine grew bored with the marriage as quickly as with everything else. She began an affair with an Italian count who turned out to be a penniless adventurer. Vladimir discovered the affair by accident, but felt no particular pain. There had never been true intimacy between them. "You'll come back, Volodya," Catherine said during the divorce, adjusting her impeccable hairdo. "Where will you escape from our circle? We are the same blood, predators. And your country mouse has long forgotten about you." Then he was sure that she was right, that he had made the right choice, abandoning provincial life and naive youthful dreams. He inherited part of the business from his father-in-law, grew the company to incredible size, became one of the most influential people in the construction. And only today, meeting Anna in the park, did he realize that he had lost the main thing. She had aged. Fatigue lay like shadows under her eyes. Simple clothes spoke of a nurse's modest income. But in her remained what he had long ago lost. A living soul, sincerity, the ability to love selflessly. And she also had a son. And their son, if you believe the boy's words about the photograph. Vladimir returned to the chair and took out his phone. The address book contained the numbers of hundreds of business partners, but there was not a single true friend. No one with whom he could share what was going on in his soul. He thought about the boy, about Max. 10 years. So Anna found out about the pregnancy after their breakup. Why didn't she tell him? Pride. Or did she realize he wasn't ready to sacrifice his career for a family? In any case, she raised her son alone. She worked as a nurse, a profession that requires dedication but pays poorly. Meanwhile, he bought expensive cars and built luxury homes for soulless people like him. Tomorrow, at the Rodnichuk Cafe, he would learn the truth. Perhaps the most painful truth of his life, that happiness was so close, but he himself had given it up for the sake of illusory ambitions. Vladimir finished his whiskey and looked at his watch. There was a day left before the meeting, the longest day of his life. Time in which he needed to find the words for a conversation that could change everything or finally close the door to the past, or perhaps open the way to a future he didn't dare expect. The Rodnichuk Cafe hadn't changed in 11 years. The same checkered tablecloths, the same smell of fresh pastries and coffee, the same cozy corners where they once made plans for the future. Vladimir arrived half an hour early and sat at their old table by the window, nervously glancing at the door. Anna appeared promptly at 7, clutching a worn photo album. She looked tired but determined. A woman who had made a difficult decision and was ready to see it through. "Thank you for coming," Vladimir said quietly, standing up. "No need to thank me." Anna sat down opposite without taking off her coat. "I didn't come for you. It's just that Maxim asked too many questions. It's better for him to know the truth than to make things up himself." They ordered tea, and an awkward silence fell. Anna slowly opened the album, and Vladimir saw himself at 20. Happy, in love, with a sincere smile and eyes full of hope. Next to him, young Anna was laughing, clinging to his shoulder. "Mom asked me to show her old photos," Anna said without looking up. "She says she wants to remember the times when I was happy. The doctor said she didn't have much time." Vladimir felt a tightening in his chest. He remembered Anna's mother, a kind, sensible woman who always treated him to homemade pies and called him her son. She believed in their love more than they did. "I'm very sorry," he said sincerely. Petrovna was special, just like her. Cancer. Final stage. Anna's voice wavered. She was holding on for Max. June, she said she wanted to see him start 5th grade. Vladimir looked at the photograph. 2 young people who believed the world was created for their happiness. When did that faith turn into cynicism? At what point did he become who he is now? He looked so sincere, he said slowly, "When did I stop being like that?" Anna finally looked up. They held a pain that hadn't dulled over all these years. "The day I decided that money was more important than love," she answered quietly, but every word hit like a blow. Vladimir wanted to object, to explain that it was more complicated than that, but the words stuck in his throat because she was right. Absolutely mercilessly right. "Anna," he began cautiously, "I want to ask about Max. Who is his father?" She tensed like a taut string. Her fingers clenched around the weight so tightly that her knuckles turned white. "Why do you need to know that?" "He's very similar. He has my eyes, my manner of speaking, even my gestures." Vladimir leaned closer. "Anna, please tell me honestly. He's my son." "Children can be like many people," she answered evasively, looking away. But Vladimir saw the truth in her face, in the way her hands trembled, in the way she avoided his eyes. Maternal instinct protected the child from potential pain, but the truth broke through all the defenses. "And you're raising him alone?" he continued softly. "Yes, and I'm doing great." "I have no doubt. But the child needs a father." "Father?" Anna abruptly put the cup down on the table. "A father is not the one who conceived the child. A father is the one who gets up at night when the child is sick, who teaches how to tie shoelaces and helps with homework, who comes to school holidays. They disappear for 11 years. Her words cut more painfully than a knife, but Vladimir understood. She had the right to this pain, to this anger. If Maxim really is his son, then he missed the first steps, the first words, the first questions about where Dad is. "I understand. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. but maybe it's not too late to fix it. At least something. Anna was silent for a long time, looking out the window at the evening lights of the city. Too much time has passed, Vladimir. Maxim has gotten used to living without a father. Why ruin his world for the sake of your doubts? What if this is not doubt? What if I am ready to become a real father for him? She looked at him with distrust. You are the man who traded love for money, who can't live without a $500,000 suit and a Swiss watch. What do you know about children except that they're expensive? Vladimir remained silent. There was nothing to object to. She was telling the truth again. But something inside him changed from the moment he saw the boy's gray eyes. Some part of his soul, dormant until then, awakened and demanded its own. After the cafe, he didn't go home, but to the office of private detective Sergei Volkov. An acquaintance had recommended him as a discreet and honest specialist. Exactly what he needed. I need the truth, Vladimir said, sitting down in a modest chair opposite the detective's desk. Just the facts. Where this woman works, who she communicates with, who the father of her child is, but delicately so she doesn't guess. Sergei Volkov, a middle-aged man with an attentive gaze and an unremarkable appearance, nodded. Understand? No rough methods. Everything is quiet and professional. Give me a week. Fate, it seemed, had decided to test Vladimir's mettle. Just 2 days later, walking through the same park where they first met, he saw Anna and Max again. The boy noticed him first and waved happily. Uncle Volodya, you've come again! Max ran up with a broad smile. And do you remember you promised to tell me about your work? Vladimir didn't remember such a promise, but such sincere joy was visible in the child's eyes that it was impossible to refuse. Anna approached slowly, clearly hesitating. Maxim, don't bother Uncle Vladimir. Oh, what are you saying? He quickly said to Vladimir. It's my pleasure. Perhaps we should go get some ice cream. And off they went, a strange trinity, connected by invisible threads of the past and an uncertain future. Maxim chattered madly, talking about school friends and favorite books. Vladimir listened, amazed at how developed and intelligent this child was. He felt the same inquisitive mind that had once driven him, but without the cynicism and calculation. Do you have children, Uncle Volodya? Maxim asked, licking an ice cream. The question struck him right in the heart. Vladimir felt Anna tense next to him. No, Max, and that's my biggest mistake. And why a mistake? From a child's lips it sounded so simple and natural. Vladimir looked at the boy, at his blonde hair, gray eyes, trusting face, and felt something he'd never experienced before. Not just sympathy or affection, but something much deeper and more frightening. The parental instinct he'd thought dead suddenly awoke with primal force. Because children are the most important thing in life, he replied quietly. A person is incomplete without them. Maxim nodded with the seriousness of a little philosopher. Yes, I also think one should have moms and dads, but I only have a mom, but she's the best in the world. He hugged Anna, and she smiled for the first time since they'd met. Walking them to the bus stop, Vladimir realized the week of waiting for the results of the detective investigation would be the longest of his life. Because he already knew the answer, knew it with his heart, which beat in unison with the heart of this wonderful boy. Only formalities remained, confirming what his soul had already accepted as a given. And then the hardest part would begin, learning to be a father at 35, Sergei Volkov's. Sergei, quitting Volkov's office, greeted Vladimir with the smell of old paper and strong tobacco. The detective sat at his desk, sorting through documents with the professional calm of a man accustomed to parsing other people's secrets in their component parts. So what? Vladimir sank into a chair, feeling the tension of the last few days squeeze his temples with a dull ache. Sergei looked up, calm, searching, devoid of unnecessary emotion. Maxim Anatolievich Morozov's birth certificate says sturdy in the father column. He handed over a copy of the document. Date of birth, February 10th. Exactly 10 months and 3 weeks after you left the city for school. Vladimir took the paper with trembling fingers. The dry, clerical lines told the story better than any novel. Maxim Anatolievich had even been given his patronymic, taking his grandfather's patronymic so as not to leave the child without a male name on the document. What else? His voice sounded hoarse. Anna Sergeyevna hadn't dated anyone seriously in all these years. Sergey pulled out several photographs taken from a distance. Work, home, the hospital with his mother, sometimes the park with his son. A vicious circle of a very lonely woman. Vladimir looked at the photos of Anna walking down the street with a tired face, clutching Max's hand. A simple life without luxury or excess. A life in which every ruble counts, every joy hard-won. The boy looks a lot like you at that age, the detective continued. I have a friend who went to school with you. I showed him a photo without telling him his name. The spitting image Volodka Sokolov in 5th grade had said. Do you think this is a coincidence? Vladimir shook his head silently. No coincidence. Only a belated, painful truth that tore his soul to pieces. He paid the detective and walked out into the street, feeling like a man who had simultaneously gained and lost everything that mattered most. He had a son, a wonderful, smart, kind boy. But a son he didn't know who grew up without a father, who might never forgive him for this absence. The phone rang as Vladimir reached the car. A strange female voice, but with a recognizable intonation, said, It's Elena, Anna's sister. We need to talk. The pause stretched. He vaguely remembered Elena Sergeyevna, a couple of years younger than Anna, more blunt and straightforward. I can no longer remain silent about what's destroying my sister, she continued decisively. Meet me in the park on Komsomolskaya an hour, alone. A middle-aged woman with a strong chin and direct gaze. She shared the same roots as Anna, but her character was forged of a harder metal. Max, your son, she said without preamble, as soon as Vladimir approached. Anna was afraid of ruining your career. She thought you had chosen another world forever. But I believe you have the right to know, and Max has the right to have a father. The words struck with the force of physical impact. It's one thing to guess, quite another to hear direct confirmation. The 11 years. Vladimir sat down on the bench. For 11 years she had been silent. She protected you both. Elena sat down next to her. You from the responsibility you supposedly weren't ready to accept. Him from a father who could appear and disappear again when he got tired of playing family. But that wasn't her decision. It was. Elena looked at him appraisingly. And you know what? Then she was right. You really weren't ready to sacrifice your ambitions for the sake of a child. And now? The question hung in the air, demanding an honest answer. Vladimir was silent for a long time, trying to find words for feelings that he himself didn't yet fully understand. I'm ready to do anything now, he finally said. Skip a business meeting for a school play. Cancel a business trip if he has the flu. Learn to read bedtime stories and help with math. Elena nodded. Then go to her. But remember, she's very scared. She's afraid to believe that you've changed. She's afraid that Maxim will become attached to you and you'll disappear again. Anna's apartment was in an old building on the outskirts of the city. Vladimir climbed the creaky stairs, feeling his heart ready to jump out of his chest. Maxim was at the neighbor's, Elena had warned him. Anna opened the door in her dressing gown, her eyes tear-stained. Apparently, her sister had already called and told him about the conversation. Come in, Anna said quietly. The small room exuded comfort and poverty at the same time. The furniture was old, but everything was clean and tidy. Max's school notebooks were on the table. His drawings were on the wall. The ordinary life of an ordinary family in which he had never been a part. Why didn't you tell me? Vladimir turned to her, and the pain accumulated over years of unconscious loneliness sounded in his voice. 11 years, Anna. 11 years of my life, his childhood. 11 years when I could have been a father. She sank into a chair, covering her face with her hands. I didn't want to burden you, she sobbed. You were with Catherine, building the empire you dreamed of. Why ruin your life with a child from an ex-girlfriend? You decided for me. Anger and despair merged into one cry. You stole fatherhood from me. I missed his first steps, his first words, the first day of school. I missed everything. Anna cried without raising her head. Her tears contained not only the pain of the moment, but also years of doubt, sleepless nights when she thought about whether she had done the right thing. I was afraid, she whispered through her tears. I was afraid that you would stay for a long time out of feelings and not out of love. I saw how you changed, how you were drawn to wealth, to that world where I was superfluous. I thought it would be better for him not to have a father than a father who would then leave again. Vladimir sank onto the sofa opposite, feeling how anger slowly transformed into understanding. Yes, she was wrong, but she made a mistake out of love for him, for the child, out of a desire to protect both of them from pain. And now? He asked wearily. Now what? Anna looked up, her eyes red but honest. Now I see that you're just as lost as you were then, only richer. The words resonated deeply, because they held truth. He truly was a lost man, who had built a world of expensive things and empty achievements around himself, but had never learned to truly live. I want to be a part of his life, Vladimir said firmly. And no one else will make decisions for me, for us. I missed 11 years, but I'm not going to miss the rest. Anna was silent for a long time, studying his face. And if he doesn't want to, if you remain a stranger to him, then I will. We'll earn his trust every day, as long as it takes. Footsteps and children's laughter were heard in the hallway. Maxime was returning from the neighbors. Anna jumped up, hastily wiping away tears. Don't tell him today. Give me time to prepare. Vladimir nodded. Time. They all needed time to get used to the new reality. A reality in which he has a son, and the son has a father who must learn to be one. The door swung open, and Maxim burst into the room with a box of puzzles in his hands. Mom, Aunt Sveta gave me a new puzzle. He froze when he saw Vladimir. Uncle Volodya, what are you doing here? I'm visiting your mother, Vladimir answered, surprised at how easily this half-truth had come. I found out that Grandma is ill. Yes, Grandma is very ill, Maxime said sadly. But Mom says she gets better when I tell her about school. Vladimir looked at his son, at his fair hair, lively eyes, trusting smile. In a few days, this boy will find out that a stranger is actually his father. How will he take this news? With joy or with disbelief? Time will tell. In the meantime, Vladimir was simply learning to be there, asking for nothing in return except the right to be present in the life of the most precious person in the world. Vladimir was sitting in a chair looking over the latest changes to the will when the door to the office swung open with such force that the glass in the bookcases shook. Maxime stood in the doorway disheveled, his eyes red from tears, and a sheet of paper in his trembling hands. Who? Mom, the boy cried, not noticing Vladimir. My name is written on Uncle Volodya's documents. He wants to make me here. Anna winced, dropping her teacup. Porcelain shards scattered across the floor, as did their hope for a gradual, delicate revelation of the truth. Max, calm down, she began, but her son interrupted her, waving the document. Is he really my dad? It says here, include Maxim Vladimirovich as the sole heir, Vladimirovich, and my name is Maxim Anatolyevich. The child's voice rang with such pain, such a sense of betrayal, that Vladimir felt something tear in his chest. The boy looked at them as if they were his worst enemies, and in that look one could read not only anger, but also deep disappointment in the adult world, which turned out to be built on lies. Vladimir stood up, holding out his hands to his son. "Don't come near me," the boy exploded. "You are both liars. If you are my dad, why did you abandon me? Why didn't he come to my birthday parties? Why did Mom cry at night thinking I was asleep?" The last words hit Anna like a slap in the face. She didn't know her son had heard her nighttime tears, seen her pain, which she so carefully hid behind daytime smiles. "Max, it's hard to explain," she tried. "It's not that hard," the boy cried, and his voice carried the intonation of an adult who had to face the cruelty of the world too early. "He abandoned us, and now he's come back because he's bored playing with money." Maxime threw the document on the floor and ran out of the room. The front door slammed and a dead silence fell over the apartment. "See," Anna whispered, sinking onto the sofa. "That's exactly what I was afraid of. He won't forgive us for deceiving him. And the worst part is, he's right. We really did screw him over. 11 years. Vladimir Molcha picked out the document. The lawyers worked quickly. The next day they could file for adoption officially, acknowledge paternity, and include their son in the will. But what good are the papers if their son views them as a traitor? That same evening, an emergency board meeting met in Vladimir's office. Igor Petrov, a longtime business partner and the company's main investor, paced the room like a caged tiger. "Volodya, you're crazy," he said, waving his arms. "Some illegitimate child could ruin our plans for good. Investors demand stability, and you're creating a family melodrama." Vladimir calmly looked at the man with whom he'd built a business for the past 8 years. Igor was a reliable partner, but his words were steeped in the same philosophy that had once driven Vladimir himself to turn his back on love for success. "This is my son," he said firmly. He said, "If our partnership depends on my family values, then we are not." "Family values?" Igor paused, staring at him. "Volodya, we're talking about billions, about reputation, about what we've been building for years." "We built money, but I want to build a life." These words were so final that Petrov realized there was no point in trying to convince him otherwise. Vladimir had changed and changed radically. The man who had always put profit above all else suddenly began talking about values. "Fine," Igor muttered, "but don't expect me to silently watch as you ruin our mutual interest for the sake of a family idol." After he left, Vladimir was left alone. The lights of the city glowed outside the window, his city, where he was an influential man. But influence, it turned out, doesn't grant the right to happiness. And happiness can't be bought with money, even a lot of it. That morning, Valentina burst into the office. His younger sister looked like a woman ready for war. A strict suit, carefully coiffed hair, a cold determination in her eyes. She always had that special persistence of younger children, accustomed to getting their way at any cost. "Volodya," she tossed a copy of the will on the table. "You've completely lost your nerve. I wish I could include the will of some foundling." "Volya, this is my son, my only heir." My sister laughed. Briefly, angrily, like someone who hears a good joke about someone else's misfortune. "What kind of son is he to you? You didn't know about him for 11 years. And what will people say? Clients, partners? Have you thought about the Sokolov family's reputation?" Her voice carried this same note as Catherine's speeches so many years ago. Concern about public opinion. Fear of being judged by those whose opinions mean nothing. They'll say I've finally become a man, not a money-making machine, Vladimir replied calmly. Valentina turned pale. Such a firmness was evident in this calm that all her arguments suddenly seemed pathetic and petty. "If you sign these stupid papers," she muttered through clenched teeth, "I'll challenge the will in court and prove you're incompetent. Try it." Vladimir rose from the table, and for the first time in years, Valentina felt a wave of fear in front of her younger brother. "You'll see how quickly you'll lose your job at my company." "Or maybe," she said with a wicked grin, It's time people found out who your Cinderella was. A simple nurse who lured a rich man. Do you think your reputation can survive that? Vladimir slowly walked around the table, approaching his sister. His movements betrayed the dangerous determination of a man, with nothing left to lose. "Valia," he said quietly, but every word resounded like a hammer blow. "If you touch Anna or Maxime, if you try to blacken their names, I'll make sure you forget the way not only to my office, but to any decent place in this city." Valentina retreated. She'd known her brother for many years, but she'd never seen such a fire in his eyes. He was no longer a calculating businessman, but a father ready to protect his family at any cost. That evening, Vladimir invited Anna to a restaurant, a quiet place on the outskirts of town, away from casual encounters with business acquaintances. They were sitting at a table by the window, talking about Max, who still refused to speak to his father, when a woman in an expensive dress approached their table. "Volodya, darling?" Ekaterina smiled, that special smile that cost thousands of dollars in beauty salons. "I see you're enjoying yourself with the locals." The same haughty tone that Vladimir had once considered a sign of privilege had vanished from her voice. Now he heard only emptiness and falsehood in it. "Gotcha," he said coldly without rising. "Meet Anna, the mother of my son." Ekaterina laughed loudly, demonstratively, like an actress playing an aristocrat in a cheap play. "A son? Volodya, why do you need this simpleton?" The nurse. "You remember what happened with us? Our circle, our life, parties, travels, people who mean something in this world." Anna sat silently, but Vladimir saw how her hands clenched, how her shoulders tensed. She was preparing to attack, but she had no intention of retreating. "You really had something," Anna said without standing or raising her voice. "The past, and we have a future." "The future." Ekaterina leaned toward the table, and a predatory light flashed in her eyes. "Darling, do you understand who he is? How much is he worth? What opportunities open up with him?" Anna looked up and looked at Ekaterina with a dignity that can be bought with money or acquired through connections. That look conveyed all the wisdom of a woman who knows her own worth and doesn't need validation from others. "I understand," she said calmly, "but I know how much I'm worth, and that's enough for me." Ekaterina straightened up as if she'd been slapped. In her world, self-respect was measured by the size of one's bank account and dignity by the brand of one's handbag. A simple nurse who wasn't ashamed of her profession and didn't dream of other people's money was an incomprehensible phenomenon to her. "You're making a mistake, Volodya," Ekaterina said. The text misspelled Anna, turning to Vladimir. "But I'll wait. Sooner or later you'll return to our world." Ekaterina glanced at Anna with disdain. "She'll always be a nurse." "And thank God," Vladimir said quietly, taking Anna's hand in his. "A nurse heals people, but you, it seems, only souls." Ekaterina turned and walked away, her heels clicking on the parquet floor. Behind her trailed the trail of the expensive perfume and the disappointment of a woman accustomed to getting everything she wants and facing defeat for the first time. "She's beautiful," Anna said quietly when the clicking of heels died down. "Yes, and completely empty inside." "And Vladimir squeezed her fingers tighter. "You are real, and that is more precious to me now than all the jewels in the world." They sat in silence, looking out the window at the evening city. Somewhere in this city, their son was still angry at the lies of adults. Somewhere, business partners were making plans to profit from other people's weaknesses. Somewhere, the sister was hatching plans somewhere. But here, at this table, two people found each other again. And this was the beginning of a new story, not as smooth as one would have liked, but honest. And honesty, as it turned out, is more precious than all the riches in the world. The hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and other people's grief. Anna was hurrying to her mother after the night shift when she was intercepted by a familiar figure in an expensive coat. Ekaterina Belova looked here like a precious stone that accidentally fell into the hospital dirt. Beautiful, but completely inappropriate. Anna. Ekaterina stopped her, and her voice sounded like a businesslike person used to solving problems with a checkbook. Let's be frank. She took an envelope from her purse, and Anna saw the corner of a bank check with an impressive number of zeros. 1,000,000 rubles, Katerina said, as if naming the price for a kilogram of apples. Here's the check. Leave the city with your son. Start a new life somewhere where no one knows you. Anna looked at the envelope, feeling not anger but a deep sadness rising inside. Sadness is the realization that there are people for whom love is a commodity, and human feelings are an object of trade. And what should I tell Maxim? She asked, quietly. That Dad turned out to be not who they thought he was. And Catherine shrugged with the indifference of someone offering an obvious solution. Why should a child need disappointment? It's better to be honest and say that some fairy tales don't have a happy ending. These words encapsulated the entire philosophy of a world where cynicism is considered wisdom, and refusing to strive for happiness is common sense. A world where it's easier to buy silence than to fight for the truth. Anna scoffed at the woman who had once been Vladimir's wife and suddenly realized Catherine sincerely doesn't understand that it's possible to live differently. For her, money truly solved all problems, because she'd never had problems that couldn't be solved with money. You know what, Ekaterina Olegovna, Anna said, and her voice held not anger but dignity. Keep your money. We don't sell our conscience or feelings. Catherine blinked in confusion, as if hearing a phrase in an unfamiliar language. You don't understand, she began. Volodya is rich, influential, but he's from another world. Sooner or later he'll return to his own people, and you'll be left with a child and shattered illusions. Perhaps, Anna agreed, but it will be my choice and my responsibility for the consequences, not your purchase of my renunciation of happiness. He walked past, leaving Ekaterina standing with the envelope in her hand. Money, which had always opened doors for the first time, proved powerless against simple human decency. Meanwhile, Valentina wasted no time. Her war against her brother was waged on several fronts simultaneously, with the methodical precision of a seasoned strategist. In the office of one of the company's business partners, she sat in a chair across from Igor Petrov, carefully sowing the seeds of doubt. Volodya's losing his grip, she said, sweating coffee with the air of a woman, worried about the fate of their common cause. This story with the illegitimate son will finish him off. Clients don't like scandals. Maybe it's time to consider a management change? Igor listened and nodded, but deep down he knew Valentina wasn't fighting for the company, but for the inheritance. However, he didn't care, as long as the profits weren't hurt. Dissatisfied with the behind-the-scenes intrigues, Valentina hired the same detective Vladimir used. Sergei Volkov accepted the assignment with professional calm. Money has no smell, and the client has a right to information. Find dirt on her, Valentina demanded, nervously shuffling through the documents. Everyone drinks, steals, cheats. No one is perfect. There must be something that will discredit her in her brother's eyes. Sergei silently took notes, although he already knew there would be nothing to search for. Anna Morozova turned out to be a rare person in his practice, pure as spring water. But the client's money smelled like any other, and professional integrity demanded that the job be done. Nature, as if sympathizing with human suffering, accelerated the pace of events. Anna's mother's condition deteriorated sharply. The doctor spoke of days, maybe weeks. The old woman seemed to be holding on with her last strength, waiting for something important. Mom wants to see you, Anna said to Vladimir over the phone, tears in her voice. He remembers everything about our love, wants to bless us. The hospital room smelled of medicine and inspiring flowers. Olga Petrovna lay among white pillows, small, fragile, but with surprisingly clear eyes. These eyes shone with that special wisdom that comes to people on the threshold of eternity. Volodenka, she whispered, extending a trembling hand. "I always knew you'd come back. Anechka kept your photo and faith in miracles for so many years." Vladimir knelt down next to the bed, feeling like a boy forgiven by his beloved grandmother. In this forgiveness there was no reproach for the lost years, only the boundless love of a woman who understands that the path to happiness is rarely straight. "Gorby Petrovna, I'm so ashamed." "Quiet, son." An old hand stroked his head. "Shame is a luxury we cannot afford. We have too little time for regrets and too much for love." Maxim sat in the corner, silently watching the scene that turned all his ideas about the adult world upside down. His grandmother was the center of his universe, a source of wisdom, warmth, and, of course, love. And if she accepts this man as a father, then it's worth reconsidering his grievances. "Maximka," his grandmother called him in a weak voice, "come to me." The boy approached, and the old woman took his hand, connecting it with Vladimir's. Their fingers, children's, men's, they lay in her palms as a symbol of the continuity of generations. "Adults sometimes make mistakes out of love, not anger," she said to the boy, but the words were addressed to all three of them. "Your mother loved your father so much that she decided not to interfere with him building his life. And your father loved you so little that he did not understand it. But now he understands." "Grammy," Maxim whispered, "and if Dad leaves again?" The question hung in the air of the room, heavy with childhood fears and adult pain. Olga Petrovna looked at Vladimir with a gaze that saw through all his intentions. "Ask him yourself. Look into his eyes and you will understand whether he is lying or telling the truth." She smiled weakly. "Our family has such a gift. We know how to see a person's soul." Maxim turned to Vladimir, and he saw in the child's eyes the same insight that shone in the gaze of his dying grandmother. The boy studied his face with the seriousness of an investigator seeking the truth. "Son, I beg you," Olga Petrovna said to Vladimir. "Take care of him. Anechka had suffered enough, and Maxim deserves a father. Not a perfect one, just a real one." When the women left to see the doctor on duty, Vladimir and Maxim were left alone in the hospital corridor. They sat on plastic chairs, and the silence hung between them, full of unspoken questions. "Are you really sure we're your dad?" Maxim finally asked. There was no childish capriciousness in his voice, only the seriousness of a small man solving an important life problem. "And he really didn't know about me." Vladimir understood that the time had come when he needed to tell the whole truth without embellishment or excuses. A child deserves honesty, even if it hurts. "Yes, son, I am your father." "No, I didn't know you existed." He paused and added, "I'm so ashamed that I missed so much of your life, that I wasn't there when you were sick, when you learned to walk, when you went to school." What if he'd known? The boy looked him straight in the eye, and Vladimir understood that this question would determine their entire future. "I would never leave you, neither you nor Mom." There was such conviction in his voice that Maxim couldn't help but believe it. "I was a foolish young man who thought money was more important than family, but I was wrong." Maxim was silent for a long time, processing what he'd heard. A struggle raged in his childish soul between resentment and the need for a father, between the fear of new disappointments and the hope for family happiness. "And now will you stay?" he asked quietly. "Forever." Vladimir crouched down to be level with his son, took him by the shoulders and looked into his gray eyes, exactly like his own. "I promise. Now I won't go anywhere, only if you send me away." Something in the child's face trembled, changed. Mistrust began to thaw like ice in the spring sun. Can I call you Dad? Dad." These words struck Vladimir harder than any accusation. They conveyed all the unconscious yearning of a child who had waited 11 years to utter this simple word. Of course, son, of course. Maxim hugged him hesitantly, afraid the embrace might be a dream. But Vladimir held the boy tightly, feeling something inside him fall into place. After many years with Kitanya, a week later an ad appeared in the local newspaper that the whole town was talking about. Vladimir Sokolov was happy to announce that he had found his son Maxim Morozov and invited everyone to share in the joy of his family's reunification. Maxim read the article over breakfast and looked at his father in surprise. "Dad, why did you write this? Now everyone will know." Vladimir put the newspaper down and smiled that open smile, long forgotten in the world of business negotiations and false pleasantries. "Let the whole world know. I'm proud that you are my son." These words contained the revolution of a lifetime. A man who had hidden his feelings for years behind the mask of a successful businessman finally decided to speak the truth. Not because it was profitable or expedient, but because love demands honesty. And in this honesty, simple as a child's smile, lay the hope that even the most complicated life stories can have a happy ending. Olga Petrovna passed away quietly as she had lived, without fuss, without drama, with the wise simplicity characteristic of people who have lived a long and honest life. She died at the hour when the sky outside was blooming, as if waiting for a new day to impart to the world a final lesson that death is not the end, but a transition to a different understanding of values. Her last words, spoken in a barely audible whisper, became a testament not only for Vladimir, but for everyone in the room. Volodenka, cherish them. Family is the only treasure that remains forever. These words settled on Vladimir's soul like a seal, sealing a vow made not only to the dying woman, but to himself. They encapsulated his entire philosophy of existence, which he understood too late, but not too late to change his fate. The funeral was the first event where Vladimir, Anna, and Maxim acted as a single family, not by documents, not by formalities, but by a deep unity of souls forged by shared grief and mutual support. Vladimir covered all the expenses, and despite Valentina's furious protests, who saw this as another example of her brother's extravagance. At the wake, when everyone who knew and loved Olga Petrovna had gathered, Valentina decided to launch an open attack. Perhaps grief had dulled her ability to calculate, or perhaps despair at the realization of her own defeat had driven her to extreme measures. "Volodya is burying someone else's mother, as if she were his own," she declared loudly, addressing not so much her brother as those present. "What next? Will he support all her relatives? Where is the line of reason?" Her voice carried not only anger, but also the genuine bewilderment of someone for whom the world was divided into friends and foes based on blood kinship and material gain. She truly couldn't understand how anyone could spend money on people who weren't legally bound to them. Vladimir stood, and silence fell over the room. Everyone understood that the moment had arrived that would determine not only the relationship between brother and sister, but also Vladimir's own stance on life. "Valya," he said firmly, but without anger, "if you insult my family again, forget about your family ties with me." "Family?" Valentina laughed with the bitter irony of someone watching everything they'd counted on crumble. "This isn't your family." Vladimir looked at Anna, who was holding the tearful Maxim's hand, and at the faces of the people who had come to bid farewell to this simple but kind woman. These faces revealed the humanity he had lost somewhere along the way to the heights of success, and was now gratefully regaining. "This is the only family I have," he said slowly, pouring all the pain of understanding into each word. "And you're just a sister in blood, not in spirit." Valentina turned pale. These words sounded like a final verdict not only on their relationship, but on the entire value system she espoused. She turned and left, carrying with her the bitterness of defeat and the inability to understand that she had lost not to money, but to love. Ekaterina appeared at Vladimir's house a week after the funeral, choosing a moment when Anna was at work and Maxime was at school. She entered like she owned the place, with the confidence that comes from considering oneself the center of the universe. "Ah, Volodya," she said without preamble, "I'm ready to forgive this affair of yours. We'll get married, adopt a boy, and give him a real future." Her proposal echoed the logic of a world where any problem is solved by changing the scenery. Ekaterina sincerely believed she could take an existing family and remake it in her own image, like a designer rearranging furniture in an apartment. "And what about Anna?" Vladimir asked, feeling a growing disgust for this beautiful but empty woman. "We'll find her a good husband, one suited to her level," Ekaterina replied with the condescension with which she discusses the placement of pets. "A nurse with a child isn't the most marketable commodity, but with your support something will work out." Vladimir looked at her and understood. Before him stood a person who had never experienced true love, not because she had been deprived of it, but because she was incapable of recognizing and accepting it. Ekaterina lived in a world where feelings were a form of currency, and people were assets in a personal portfolio. "Katya," he said with disgust which he made no attempt to hide, "you have no heart, and never had one." She left as she came, beautiful, rich, and absolutely alone in her golden world where money can buy everything except the human soul. Business, oddly enough, did not suffer from Vladimir's family upheavals. On the contrary, when he stopped viewing money as an end in itself and began to see it as a tool for creating human happiness, things got better. New partners were found, people who valued not only profit but also integrity. One of them, Mikhail Stepanov, said when signing a large contract, quote, "Vladimir Alexandrovich, a man who fights so hard for his family, deserves trust in business too. You can work with such people not only for money, but also for the soul." And indeed, when Vladimir began to work not only for accumulation but also for creation, money began to come as a side effect of a well-structured life. "It turns out," he once said to Anna, "when you work, not only for money, money comes on its own. How strange the world works." The romantic line between Anna and Vladimir developed slowly, like a flower that afraid of being deceived by the spring. There was too much pain between them, too many years of separation to simply return to what once was. But gradually, day after day, they rediscovered each other. Not as a memory of past love, but as new people capable of new feelings. Anna said to Vladimir one evening when they were walking in the very park where they met, "I looked for myself for a long time in money and success, and found it in your eyes. And I was afraid that you had changed too much," she admitted, stopping under a lamppost. "But you have become better than you were. Life has taught you what youth could not give." "We cannot return the lost," he said quietly, taking her hand in his. "But we can make the future happy." These words contained all the wisdom of people who understood. True love is not an attempt to restore the past, but a willingness to build the future based on a new understanding of each other. Vladimir proposed in the same park on the same bench where they'd said goodbye 11 years earlier, thinking it would be forever. Maxime was there as a witness, as a participant, as someone who had a say in the decision regarding their shared future. Vladimir knelt down in front of her, and there was no theatricality in this gesture, only the sincerity of a man who finally understood what it means to be a real man. "Anna Sergeyevna," he said, his voice trembling with emotion, "I've lost you twice through my stupidity. Give me a chance to never lose you again." "Mom," he said. "Yes," Maxim happily interjected. "Otherwise, Dad will just keep kneeling like a monument." Anna laughed through her tears. The laughter Vladimir hadn't heard for 11 years, and which proved more precious than all the symphonies in the world. "Yes, Volodya, of course, yes." The wedding was modest, held in a small circle of close friends. There was no pomp, no expensive decorations, no hundreds of guests, but there was something missing from all the previous celebratory events in Vladimir's life: sincerity and genuine joy. On his wedding day, Vladimir officially adopted Maxim. The boy received his father's patronymic and surname not as a formality, but as a symbol of belonging to the family he had longed for. "Now I am Maxim Vladich Sokolov," he announced to the guests with the solemnity of a little prince. "And I have a real family." These childish words encapsulated the essence of the transformation that had taken place. Family is not a biological given, but a choice based on love and mutual responsibility. Valentina unexpectedly appeared at the wedding. She stood in the doorway of the hall, embarrassed and confused, like someone who had been going down the wrong path for a long time and finally realized it. In this uncertainty, the little girl who once ran after her older brother, begging to be taken with him to his adult games, was visible. "Volodya," she said quietly, and her voice sounded like the intonations of that same little sister who was afraid to be left alone. "Forgive me. Maybe I was wrong." Vladimir looked at his sister and saw in her eyes something that hadn't been there for a long time: humanity. Perhaps the death of Grandma Anna forced her to reconsider her priorities. Perhaps loneliness had become too heavy a burden. In any case, she came not to demand, but to ask. "The family is always ready to forgive, Valya," he replied, "but only if it is sincere." A year after the wedding, Vladimir learned to combine a successful business with fatherhood without sacrificing either. Anna continued to work as a nurse, not because she needed money, but because she could not imagine herself without serving people. Maxim grew up in an atmosphere of love and understanding, knowing that he had parents who chose each other and him not out of coercion, but from their hearts. A new family photo was taken in the same park where this whole story began. In it, 3 people smiled with that special happiness that is not easy to come by, but through overcoming and understanding. Anna carefully put that a very old photo in the family album next to new. A symbol of how the past doesn't disappear, but transforms, becoming the foundation for a better future. And Vladimir, looking at his dearest people, understood the truth that cost him 11 years of wandering. True wealth cannot be inherited or earned. It can only be created with your own hands and heart, day after day, choice after choice, with love and a willingness to take responsibility for someone else's happiness. And in this understanding lay all the wisdom of life, simple as a child's smile and deep as a human soul that has finally found its home. Dear friends, the story has come to an end, and I have an important question for you. Tell me honestly, what have you been putting off, and why haven't you done it yet? Perhaps it's a trip you've long dreamed of, or a conversation that should have been started long ago. Or maybe it's something very small but yours. Share your experiences in the comments. How do you experience such moments, and how do you find the strength to take a step towards yourself? How do you get out of this situation? Let's go. Let's discuss. Your stories can be a valuable source of support for others. Thank you for being with me. Like this if the story resonated with you, and subscribe to the channel. Check out the other videos. They're in the playlist that just appeared on the screen. Vitali read the text. Women's Stories from Life channel. Have a good day. Live with love every day.